All right, welcome back to the channel, Kamal. Today we're going to follow up on one of our last videos where we talked about The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 1 to 6. Today we're going to wrap up the season and talk about the last three episodes, 7, 8, and 9. So let's get right into it. Episode 7 was Left Behind,
Yep.
which followed Ellie in a flashback of hers where it kind of showed how she got infected and that she had a best friend who she ended up being a little bit more than friends with, and
Mhm.
unfortunately she passed away. Kamal, what do you think of that episode?
I think it was a good sort of I guess I say tangent from I would say from like what we have seen in the previous episodes where it really touched into Ellie's sort of, you know, own personality and how she really viewed uh what is it, this sort of like the community she lived in and how she was very sort of rebel in that case.
Yeah, like the
And
QZ and Fedra.
Yeah, exactly, and how like she was very much confused, like, oh, should I leave? This is really not my thing, or kind of finding this sort of this inner battles. And I think it was good. I think it was something that was already expected, considering that we know from earlier episodes where she was talking about how this is not her first time she killed someone. So we assumed that this episode was sort of going to touch more onto that and like who was that first kill and like why was it so emotional for her. And I think it we kind of got that in the last episode, but it was sort of a good it wasn't action packed as much as I thought it would be, but it was quite beautifully done, I thought, and it really showed sort of how much in a way they've missed as well, like going into the mall, like how much they've missed sort of being a child, right, growing up in this sort of infected world. Um and I very much also enjoyed like just the interaction they had with I don't actually know the actress's name, or I forget the name of the character. It was a while back, but um,
Are you talking about Riley?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, like I thought it was really well done. Like again, I don't really. It wasn't anything where I had too much complaints. I wasn't like I didn't really want more from the episode. I thought it was just right. Like it didn't give too much away. It didn't hook us with like, sticking too much to the story. It just kind of gave a small glimpse of like a memory that she had at the time when Joel was sort of surviving, and or sort of that conflict. Should she leave Joel? Should she, do something for that? So yeah, I thought it was a really well transition from the current events that was going on in the show right after Joe got stabbed, I believe. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple.
Yeah, I thinking about it now, it's kind of fits nicely into the situation they're in with Joel being out of commission and like on the verge of dying because in Left Behind, in the mall specifically with Riley and Ellie, she's also in a situation where she has to, you know, she's in like a life or death
Yep.
situation where decisions have to be made, and um it probably isn't going to be okay, but
Hmm.
she really wants it to work out, right?
Yep.
And luckily for her, it does work with Joel. She's able to in the next episode
Yep.
able to get some medicine for him.
Hmm.
But I think that Left Behind, it was a really good episode. But if like I could go back and kind of redo how it was done, I think
Mm.
I would have sprinkled in the flashbacks, kind of like more of like a network TV show would do, where it's like
Mm.
you get certain parts of the episode. There's like
Right.
flashback to this moment that's also a mirror of her, like maybe in the forest, like looking at something. It's like sprinkled
Yeah.
through instead of just a complete diverging plot.
Hmm.
However, I do think that if you're looking at it in the sense of did they adapt the DLC very well, I thought that they hit all the key
Yep.
moments, and also the expanded material, just like I said last time,
Hmm.
was amazing. I think that like all the small stuff that they're doing that's on top of what we've seen in the game
Hmm.
is doing a great service to the show.
Yep.
Especially since it is a TV show.
Hmm.
So like the stuff with her at the Fedra camp, and how not like she's struggling with her sexuality at all, but
Hmm.
like her struggle with like trying to figure out who she wants to be in the Fedra
Yeah.
confines is, you could kind of see parallels to that with her like being vulnerable with Riley, and like um like coming out and being her own person, like not
Mhm.
being scared of being who she is, and that's kind of like what the officer was leading to with like the
That's right.
keys and you could either have the keys or you can be the one who is doing like
Mhm.
janitor jobs or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, no, and I thought, yeah, like kind of, I thought again, like I kind of agree. Like I think they really did a good job of sort of sticking to the DLC and kind of not really going sort of changing the characters and like I really like that they didn't really try to explore too much of her sexuality in here because like that wasn't really the whole point of this episode, right? It was really, I think, just to show just her trying to become a little more vulnerable and again having those conflicts where like should I stay and sort of take that key that the officer gave her or should I go with Riley and join the Fireflies? And I kind of think it mirrored quite well. Like I know you were thinking of sort of having these small snippets of flashbacks, but I actually think it mirrored what was going on with Joel and her relationship with Joel quite well, and that she's sort of she's sort of this child, she's sort of like the package for Joel, right? That he just wants to take her, and like I think she in that moment of the episode, she sort of still felt that even though she's warming up to him a little bit, and she's opening up in a very similar way of how like she looked like those subtle scenes where she was looking at Riley, and like there's a little bit of the pause between her, like something very similar I see with like what Joel and her had prior to the moment, and it's the same thing. Like she gave Riley gave Ellie the option like, hey, join me, or well, she didn't really give him an option. She was like, you should join me, like this is kind of like what I want to do and think this is the right thing. And then when she found that Riley was one who was setting all these bombs for the Firefly, it's kind of very similar conflict that she had when like she realized that like Joel is just murdering people. Like kind of like I thought those subtle things like were kind of really well done, and I thought it kind of mimicked really well like the relationship she had with Joel at that time. So yeah, but you're gonna say something?
Yeah, I like the parallel you brought up with like Joel, her. It's like very easy for her and Joel just to be like, you're the package, but then
Yeah.
there are like the small moments where it's like their father-daughter relationship, and with
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Riley, it's like they're best friends, but then there's like those moments where it's like,
Yeah.
are they more than friends? Do they want to be
Mm-hmm.
more than friends?
Yeah.
Those are so like some of the things that I like to look back and think about because I honestly I didn't really notice that until like I replay it in my head. I'm like, oh man, they actually did set that up like really well, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's really well written. Like just as a story is like super good.
Yeah.
Um, I think like also what I like is that Ellie is probably 13 in that flashback, or
Mm-hmm.
13, or she's 14 still, because it's like not too far
It's not so far
that
from.
far back because
Yeah.
she was recently bitten at the beginning of the show, so
Mm-hmm.
probably 14. Um, I like that they don't make them like stupid,
No.
like they don't make them seem oblivious, like they're actually quite intelligent. Like
Oh yeah.
14-year-old is not just like like not they're not super intellectual, and like they don't know everything, but when they're growing up in a specific environment, like they'll notice things and they'll know
Yeah.
stuff, especially like with the bombs and
Mm-hmm.
like, well, how is that, what you're doing is actually going to affect everyone, and like
Yeah.
maybe it's not just right and wrong, it's like there's some nuance that they're able to pick up on, but then
Mm-hmm.
they're also 14-year-olds, and when it comes to the drinking, like drinking that
Yeah.
alcohol, like it still shows that they're young, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
really
think
like.
I think they just did. I think they really stuck like they stuck to the script. It was, I think, honestly, if they show me the screenplay, it would have just been very simple, straightforward, and, like no improvisation. Like it was just well done, and I thought I thought like again like there wasn't much there wasn't really need, like there wasn't a lot of need to like overlook into it. It was just simple, and I think yeah, I think episode was really just really well done. So yeah.
Yeah, there's two ways a script can be seen on screen. It's like either you can really tell they're trying
Mm,
hard as a writer, or it's you could see it on screen and you could tell, oh, that was like a really
yeah.
well written script. Like it goes two ways, but definitely with The Last of Us, it's been
Yeah.
the latter.
It almost feels like if they it almost feels like if they, how do you say, like I'm not saying this is supposed to like kind of shit talk the show. It's more of saying like if they took away that episode, I don't think I would have missed anything, right? Like I think it's one of those things where like, hey, like I knew like even if you didn't know too much about the game, you kind of had these like senses of like Riley, like I'm sorry, of you know, Ellie had a little bit of the struggle with in Fedra, and like some of those relationships might have been like hurt, and again like that thing that she alluded to, like, you know, this was not her first kill, and people always had that in their mind. Like, I think if they took this away this episode, like, I don't really think I would have lost anything, but I'm glad they put it, and I'm glad like the story sort of past that now, and like it definitely even shows like just how Ellie, how mature Ellie was at that age, right?
Mhm.
Especially because she knew sort of the risk and the reward of, you know, going to the mall or joining Fedra, and you know, and at the same time, I think it showed just her maturity and like how she will, I guess, in episode 9 interacted with Joel in that one scene. So yeah,
Yeah, and the way you put that is like exactly like video game DLC. Like you get the base game,
yeah,
you play through it, you should get a very complete game and
yeah,
story, and then the DLC is like a little bit extra icing on the cake, right?
yeah.
So very apt. Okay, so going to episode 8,
Mm,
this is where we have Ellie on her own,
yeah.
and not a flashback, and she comes across David's camp,
Yes.
who he's the leader of like this kind of religious cult,
Yeah.
and they may or may not be struggling with food. What did you think of episode 8?
So episode 8, it felt long. That's the first thing. I don't know if it might have been the longest episode. I'm not sure, but
I think it's
um,
longer than the finale even.
oh yeah, the finale I think was one of the shortest episodes. If I'm not mistaken, but so episode 8, I actually thought um, if I actually thought it was one of my favorite episodes to watch. If I'm not gonna lie, like I know some of the early episodes are actually quite well done, and but I thought like I think it was episode 3 where they met what is it, the two brothers
Yeah, so episode 3 was Bill's town, I believe, and then episode 4, uh,
was
it could have been episode 4 or 5 is when they met Henry and Sam.
yeah, so meeting those, I think that was my favorite episode, but I think this one I would say tops it a little bit just because of like the ending of that episode. Like, I thought it
I'm
was
gonna say it
just
right now. I called it. I
I
called
knew you
exact. I
did.
mean, I've played the game, so I know, but I
Yeah.
also called the way they put it in the show.
Yeah, no, it was like okay, like okay, look, we can talk so much about like anything happened before, like the ending, like, you know, like the struggles that David had with the camp, and you know, sort of the cannibalism that they sort of alluded to, and but I think David, okay, for David character was really well done. Like, you kind of see like, you know, he was definitely someone who like, and he's such a like a complicated man. Like the fact that he like slapped the daughter of um I forget her name, but I think it was
But I
like
don't even know if that character had. She may have been given a name, but it was so inconsequential. But it was
anyway,
like
it
it just goes to show the cult of personality and how invincible he was, right?
yeah, exactly. And I thought that this I think the couple of episodes where like he continually wanted to keep Ellie alive. You know, I didn't know if that was for cannibalistic reasons or because he genuinely like wanted her on his side, or
Do you want
uh,
me to explain that slightly?
yeah, go for it.
So in the game, it's more so alluded that David is he has unhealthy relationships with young people,
Mm,
and she's not the only one.
right.
So there's like a line. I don't know if it made it into the show. I can't recall, but in the game, it's like, oh, David's got a new pet, and
Mm,
so, like that's what he was going to basically groom or force Ellie to be like his plaything. And
right.
then once that kind of went sideways and she like was not having it,
Yeah.
um, that's when they resorted to, okay, we're just gonna chop you up, and then
Yeah.
eventually it escalates, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. And well, yeah, and well, the episode itself, like, it definitely, again, it was, I think Ellie primarily was the one doing pretty much everything on her own. You know, she was the killing of the deer was the first one, then she met David, and then sort of trying her best to diverge all of them from Joel, which eventually, I guess, worked in Joel's favor and Ellie's favor. But I I thought it was my favorite episode just because I would say it was just because of the ending. Like, I just thought it was um they stuck, I think they stuck exactly to the game, which I was very happy that they did. They didn't change a lot of it.
So
I
I just
thought
want to mention with the
yeah,
sticking to the game, they did make some changes,
okay.
such as that moment where David and Ellie are in the cabin.
Mm.
Um, in the game, you have a huge like wave of clickers that come.
Oh, okay.
Uh, in the show, we see zero clickers that
Zero, yeah.
episode, and then also at the end of the episode when he's trying to assault her,
Mm.
it's more subtle in the game. Like if you don't think that way, like
Yeah,
if you don't really pick up on that stuff,
yeah.
then you're probably not going to notice. Like it would go right over your head. But in the show, they make it very explicit of like what's
Yeah.
going on.
And that's what I think. I think that I think that's one of the reasons why, like, sometimes a show or a movie is sort of better at doing than what a video game can do, is that it shows sort of explicitly like the emotions. It shows sort of and again, they didn't have to get too graphic about it. Like even the fire itself was not as big as what happened in the game, if I remember. Like
Hmm.
I don't think that was the main point of the focus. The main point of focus there was just that you could see sort of Ellie's like I don't even know how to explain it. Like it was such a like in a way like she's still a child. Like she had to do that. Like I think that someone counted the numbers of like hits she did. It was like 22.
Oh, with the meat cleaver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, that yeah. I saw some. So that it also did the great thing of like, where you don't have to show what's going on sometimes.
Mhm.
Because I feel like if you were to show David after the meat cleaver situation,
Yeah.
it would just kind of be like overindulgent on the
Yep.
moment. Like that's not the point. But I saw some online discourse being like, "Oh, why didn't they show it?" It's like, guys, come on. Like
Yeah.
it was not about like the it wasn't about the act itself or like the outcome. It was more so like look how this little girl is like traumatized and being forced in a really cruel world
Exactly.
to murder someone.
Exactly. And it's yeah, that's a good point because that's exactly what they did with episode 3 with Bill and where they when at the very end when they were zooming sort of out from when Joel and Ellie were driving and they stopped at the window, right? They didn't show what happened, right, in the bedroom, like how they died or whatnot, right? That's that
Mhm.
and I think that's something that uh they did exactly what they did here is where they just focus on Ellie's face. They showed sort of her like this. I think you could definitely see the fear that she had in her eyes. You could see the trauma she was probably like she went through and was going through, and you could see just that even though she says this is not her first skill. I mean, in truth, I think this really was like this just shows like it also shows how we have this continual discussion with like Joel sort of easily going through killing people and not having that, to talk about like, you're killing these innocent people. And I think this really sort of that was a nice juxtaposition that I thought was done here is that she was really killing someone who was in this case quite bad in my case. And you could still see that fear and terror she had in her eyes, something
Yeah.
that even Joel would probably not have, right? So
Yeah, it kind of shows that she still has like some morality left in her and like of
yeah,
what's right and wrong. Whereas like yeah, Joel's a very broken man who's done some
yeah.
very evil things in the past, and he knows what needs to be done. Especially like when he was interrogating David's men to
Mm,
find out where
mm,
the camp was.
yeah,
Like it just does. He knows what he needs to do, and he doesn't think twice about like if
that's
he
right.
has to kill someone, and that comes into play at the finale as well.
Hmm.
I think also an important thing for Ellie's character in this episode was when she was dealing with killing David.
Hmm.
Um, Joel was not in the room,
That's right.
whereas in
That's
the
right.
game, Joel is like he comes in at the tail end of her killing
Yeah,
him, and then they have that moment where it's like he was about to, and then he's like I know. But in this one, she's on her own,
exactly.
which I think is an important distinction between like the two mediums,
Hmm.
and how it kind of grows Ellie's character a bit more.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so the thing I called, if you recall, it was like the way that they handled
Yeah,
Ellie
yeah,
and Joel meeting up, and like how it would basically parallel like his daughter dying to when he
exactly.
sees Ellie in like distress,
Yeah,
which was beautiful and it made me very
yeah,
teary eyed.
yeah.
um, do you have anything else for episode 8, or do you want to go to the finale?
No, I
Oh,
think
I do
that
want
that
to mention one thing, and
yeah.
this is not super important, but it is an interesting detail. The secondhand man to David was
Mm.
played by Troy Baker,
Who
who
was the
was the voice
voice
and
of Joel?
motion capture for Joel in the
Yep.
video game.
Yep.
And
Well, that actually exactly
that leads us into
exactly.
episode 9, the finale,
Yeah.
where it opens up with I think her name
Ashley.
is
Ashley.
Ashley Johnson,
Yep.
who is the voice and motion capture for Ellie
Yeah.
in The Last of Us
Exactly.
video game,
Yeah.
which was quite neat. And it's like, who else to play Ellie's mom than
Exactly.
Ellie?
Yeah.
So that was really cool. But yeah, episode 9 also has a lot of expanded material,
Mm.
especially at the beginning when we
Exactly.
see Ellie's pregnant mother
Yep.
on the run um, from clickers, I think it was.
I don't
And
think I don't know if
or
it
was
was
it people?
clickers. No, I don't think it was clickers. I think it was just an infected.
Okay. Yeah, on the run and to an abandoned
Yep.
house or some type of safe house that they might have set up. Um, and yeah, she's like pregnant, giving birth, and out comes Ellie.
Yeah, I mean that was again, yeah, that was sort of they expanded on that, and again they kept it very simple. They didn't go anything further than that. They didn't really show. I thought the short sequence that they did, like they showed enough emotions from like a mother seeing a child for the first time, as well as giving the child away, and they didn't really do anything else. You could see that, and we got a little bit of glimpse of like potentially how Ellie, is able to stay sort of as
Immune.
a immune, or sort of as they were alluding to. The doctor was saying she's sort of like she's wearing a mask, right? Because he was saying that the Corsa has been living with her since she was born, and they infected see her as something normal. So it's almost like we kind of get a little bit of a glimpse of it. Again, I don't think it was. It's not, other than expanding on it. I don't really think it was too like too important or too relative to the story. Other than we got to see after that when they transitioned to Joel and Ellie starting having that a little bit of an issue with discommunication, and Ellie sort of still traumatized from what happened before, and Joel sort of finally trying to crack some jokes up and wanting to open up, but and until they get to when they were ambushed, that sweet moment when they were talking and opening up and being vulnerable to each other, I think up to those scenes was just, it was good. It was it exactly I think what we needed, and nothing more than that. I thought.
Okay, my opinion on the finale was the season probably could have used another episode, and the
Oh, for sure.
finale didn't really it. I'll try and explain myself, but I don't think the finale was as strong as it could have been, and here's kind of why. The flashback with Ellie being born, yes, it's nice to see, I guess, like it's
It's not
sweet,
relevant though. Like,
but it's like super. I don't think we need it. Like, we don't
no.
necessarily need to know why she's immune.
Mm,
I think it makes the world feel smaller because Marlene knows her mom.
yep.
And I can't, but the thing is, I can't remember if that is like a plot point or like mentioned at all previously. So maybe I'm off base with that, but I don't think she needs to be that connected to
Mm,
Marlene because she's already connected to Marlene through Riley. So like
exactly.
it's double down on something that like doesn't need to be there.
And I also like that's one of the reasons where I'm like it was good, but like they didn't really need to put it, because I think it also kind of like devalues a little bit of like, this sort of idea of like, oh, why is she immune? Like, I don't like, again, we don't need to really need to know that. The doctor said it enough. Like, we
Yeah,
need
like
to.
why she's immune's not the most important thing.
Yeah.
Um, the the crux of it is just like this road trip through hell
Mm,
and bonding like and bonding with a father and daughter figure,
yeah.
and kind of like working on your trauma that then change it, just because something happened to you doesn't mean that it has to be that way. And then
Exactly.
eventually it does, when we get to later with like part 2, like the message does change. But
Yeah.
um I
I
think that's
think.
what's more important. And then also the tonal shift, like as soon as the flashback is over, the tonal shift with like Joel being like, "Hey Ellie, like, oh, this
Yeah.
like this it was just like so bizarre." And I think that there was no room to breathe, or like we go from the last time we saw them was they're like super close, and then the
Hmm.
next time we see it, it's like Ellie's contemplating if she should even do this thing, but at the same time, she doesn't even have any reference for like this being a dangerous procedure. Like she is going into it I'm referencing the video game because this is what I know.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
she's going into it naively, like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Like we go there, fireflies get their cure,
yeah.
everything's good, like it's all gonna be good. And then it takes away from the twist where because it cordyceps grows in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
um, she's gonna die regardless.
Exactly.
So like it just I don't know. I think that it kind of did a disservice to what they worked on the entire season because
I
it's a
do you
little bit of a
think
whiplash.
Yeah, do you think if they do you think if they got rid of that first scene with Ellie being born, they could have sort of increased the length of what's happening in the hospital? Because I think that was also quite rushed.
Oh yeah, like I
Like,
thought so too. So like I'm just gonna say I thought it was fine a fine episode, but
yeah.
there are things that they could have fixed.
Hmm.
Like if you took away the cameo and like
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
flashback and maybe moved the cameo to like her being a hospital worker
Hmm.
or something, and you give that time to transition from winter to spring, or I think they might be in summer, whatever, move seasons, right?
Mm,
Then kind of explain why the tonal shift is happening with like Joel
mm,
being like all like fatherly
mm.
and maybe Ellie is still contemplating it. Like, fine, you could keep that, but
Yeah,
then
yeah.
expand the rampage at the hospital because that is the crux of
That is
everything that's gonna
exactly,
go forwards. Like,
exactly.
it's kind of a bizarre choice to me.
Well, yeah, it was sort of one of the more important like action sequences in the game, right? It's sort of you know that this is sort of Joel in this whole the whole season to her, you know, she was just a package, right? Get it to the Fireflies, he gets what he wants, he moves on. But in the hospital for the first time, we sort of see this like in the video game as well, like same thing, right? It's the first time where we see Joel's actually fighting for her, right? It's
Mhm.
he's like sure, like you know, like he saved her a couple of times and she saved him, but all that stuff. That's normal, right? You go on a adventure that happens, but like this is for the first time where like his whole purpose, right? He talks about this thing of purpose. Tommy mentions it in the game, sorry, in episode 6, I think, or one of them, where he
Episode
talks about
six, yeah.
having this purpose, right? And his wife having birth. It's the same thing, right? Joel has to find the purpose. He's now figured out he hasn't given up, and yeah, they talk a little bit about it in that short sequence, right? Like right after. But one thing I have to say, I think I I do agree it would be nice to have sort of that transition from seasons. I do think the transition after episode 8 where Joe's all like, you know, like trying to crack up a joke or something. I think if you I actually the way I actually thought of it was that you can see it in his voice, like you can actually hear it in his voice is like it's almost like if a father is like he knows a child is upset and he's trying to sort of like do you know what I mean? So I think
To
uh,
suss it out, yeah.
exactly like I think I'm gonna like I would have to kind of say like I might have to slightly disagree. Like I do think that was actually quite like I'm not gonna say it's extremely well done. I'll say it was good. They showed sort of Joel trying to be a little bit of father figure and like trying to crack a little bit of jokes to see because he's lost all that like sure he had a daughter, but he's also lost a lot of years without her, right?
Mhm.
Right, that's
Yeah,
thing
like
too.
it still has that nuance of like what people do in the real world, right?
Yeah.
And how parents will do subtle things to try and like figure out what their kids thinking or
Mhm.
like try to get them feeling better.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah.
still do that, but I think it would have benefited from like even just a moment where he's like,
Mm.
"Hey Ellie, like let's do this or let's keep going." And then she's like, not feeling it." And then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
see like him like slip into that, "Oh, well, what about this
Yeah, yeah.
board game I found?" I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking too hard about it, but I do want to go to where Marlene breaks the news to Joel
Yep.
that the cordyceps is in the brain because I felt like this was just like glossed over.
Yeah.
Like it didn't have the impact it did like when they played in the game because
Mhm.
that scene in the game was like a big like mic drop
Mhm.
because no one expected it and then finding out that it's like yeah it's like in all over her brain and they have to extract it and basically she's going to
Yeah.
die.
Well, I think in
um
the yeah, because in the show it was actually Joel who realized like because Marlene was trying to be a little like like you know she didn't want to say a lot, and I think Joel was the one who realized Cordyceps growing the brain, and he's the one who realized, and that's what I think they yeah I agree. I think they missed a lot of that. Like they should have expanded more. They should have because again I agree that was a big mic drop. That was sort of the reason that played out to Joel going on this full rampage against in the hospital, which I also have my thoughts on that. But you have to. Do you want to finish some stuff?
Yeah, so like there's that, and then when it comes to him actually like shooting up the hospital,
Yeah.
um you know what I think they could have done to
Yeah.
prove the impact of when it's revealed
Mm,
with
mm,
Abby is like
mm.
maybe film it like it's an action sequence, and we should be like, oh
Exactly.
hell yeah, Joel, like you go get them,
Yeah.
like go save Ellie. But then when you play it back next season or 2 seasons from now, right, you
Mm,
realize, oh no, that's not how it played out.
hmm.
T was murdering people, you
Yeah.
know. But this, they played it more of like, oh no, Joel's doing an evil thing, and they really try to make it out that like what he's doing is bad.
Hmm.
Whereas in the game, because you're playing through it as an action
Mm.
sequence, you're like, oh hell yeah, like let's go
Yeah.
save
Yeah.
her. Like we love Ellie, let's go get her.
Yeah.
And even when like the doctor dies in the game, it's like, yeah, he killed somewhat of an unarmed person or someone
Yeah.
who's
It
not
was.
so much of a danger with that
Yeah.
knife.
Yeah.
Um, but in the show, it was like they show like his brain, whereas in the game you don't focus on that, and then you
Yeah.
see it in part two where it's like, oh my god,
Hmm.
you killed like her dad,
Yeah.
and it's, I don't know. I just think that it loses that subtlety in a way.
Yeah. I wonder. I wonder even like. I wonder if like in season two, and because we know Abby's going to be, well, Last of Us Part Two. We know Abby's going to be a huge part of that. I wonder whether they're going to show flashback to that scene, but from the perspective of her dad, and like sort of like kind of doing so. Maybe I assume that's why they maybe like they didn't want to show too much. Like I'm assuming maybe they're gonna show something like that from his perspective, and like seeing Joel there and having that sort of like you can see from a outside perspective like okay, how bad Joel actually is. But um yeah, I kind of agree. I think they should have definitely done exactly what you were saying. And I mean, I think like a lot of TV shows and movies do that. Like they show sort of this rampage and this sort of evil person has going on this murderous streak with like putting a little like slowing things down, showing like playing a little bit of a nice soundtrack, and like ultimately it does show that Joe has a good heart, but he's not a good person, right? Like literally
Hmm.
killing, and you can see this like as you're saying that killing the guy who just has a knife and not sparing anyone, right? Like, and as for and at the end as well with Marlene. So I think they could have done that. I think again, get rid of that first sequence. Like we don't really need that, and it sort of increase the time for what they have in the hospital and talk a little more about that. What do you think of the last scene with
I thought,
Marlene?
oh, with Marlene,
Well, Marlene and Ellie.
okay, so the Marlene scene, eh, I there's not much to it because that's pretty much how it went down from what I
Okay,
remember. But
yeah,
within the game, am I mistaken that they like intercut it
they did.
with
Yeah,
him like driving, which I guess they kind of did in the show, but not. It just didn't have like the same impact.
it
But
didn't.
that could be because I knew it was coming. Like I
Yeah, yeah,
knowing the outcome probably took away a little bit of the, oh my god, he
hmm,
killed her.
yeah.
But the last scene with Ellie, that was, I think they did a good job there.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah.
made it way more clear that Joel lied, like
Hmm,
not lied, but like maliciously told a white lie.
hmm.
Um, and in the game, it's more so like he lies to her, but she believes him. And then it's in part two where she starts to question whether it's real, right? Whereas in the show, it's more clear that like she doesn't actually believe him, but
Hmm.
she wants to, and so she says she does, right? And so that life can move on.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a good ending, and I really like that we're gonna get probably more Tommy in season two.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you heard, but season two is possibly not doing part two right away. That they're gonna fill the gap. So
Well, yeah, and I kind of yes, yeah. I guess maybe before we move on to that, like I do agree with you. I think the last scene that they had, they did a really good job, and I did like the fact that you could see that Ellie was trying to like she knew he was kind of lying, and but I'm glad that you could see that sort of the conflict she was having, like at the moment, and I think it alludes really well to the earlier conversation they had where you know uh she will do anything as long as Joel's by her side and he has found his purpose. and that's the thing of what you were mentioning, like moving on with life. And I think she's kind of realized that, like, you know what, like Joel is the only person for me right now. Like, even I know he lied, and well, I don't know, right? Like, again, she had that conflict. You could see it, and I'm glad they sort of they continued that. I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but like in the game, did they just like, I don't know if Ellie replied back to Joel. Did they just cut it off, like with her just like, or am I
I think
wrong?
she does say all right, and then
She
it cuts
does?
them back.
Okay. Okay. Because for some reason I was remembering like they just cut the game and then that's it, and like we're sort of left on this like, okay, like is she, and what happens next? But yeah, I mean, yeah, so I did hear about season two, and then they're not gonna like do the whole part two of the game, which I think is good, because I think what's gonna happen is probably at the end of like season two, Joel's gonna die, or he's close to dying.
Mm.
That's what I'm gonna say.
So you think like halfway through season 2 they're gonna introduce like the Wolverines and like that whole other faction, and then get to the part like the cliffhanger is that Abby kills Joel?
Well, it's either she kills him, or like we finally get that scene where you see Abby and Joel in that like
Oh, where
interacting,
he's
and we
like trying
kind
to
of,
help them.
exactly, and then we kind of cut to that, and then that's when, like, I don't know, maybe season three or something. But well, the reason for that is just because of the fact that they worked for the whole, like, this whole one season, they worked so hard to establish this relationship with Joel and Ellie, and I don't see them just kind of cutting it off like prematurely like they did in the game, because in the game he was killed quite early on. If anyone who's played the game, like,
Yeah,
he was killed quite early, and I don't think they would do that because I don't know about you, but people are probably watching the show just because Pedro Pascal as well. Like, you
yeah,
know, that,
that guy's carrying TV right now.
yeah, exactly. Kill-
I could see them doing a lot of moments in like Jackson with Tommy and Joel. I could
oh
see
yeah,
that being
yeah,
the start of the season where it's like him revealing to Tommy like this is what I did,
yeah.
and then maybe like the seasons like him trying to uh like figure out what do I do with Ellie? Like for him it's, a little bit on his mind, but also no big deal. She might not be so trusting, but still
Mm,
wants to be his daughter kind of thing.
mm,
And I could see some guitar lessons in the future, some trips
yeah.
out to the river, kind of like they did in the game. I'm interested. I'm really interested of what they do, because this will be like kind of the make it or break it of whether or not the showrunners can actually use this material
Mm,
properly.
mm.
Uh, so there could be so much speculation, but I think we'll just have to wait till like a year and a half to 2 years whenever the next one comes out.
Yeah, and I think as long as they stick, I mean, like, yeah, they stick to the same team, and I think Neil Druckmann, I think it was on Twitter. I don't know if you saw it, but he showed a teaser poster of someone holding like their forearm and holding like a hammer or something, which I think people are alluding to Abby would, and the weapon she used to like
I thought she used a
kill.
golf club.
That's what I thought as well, but I don't know. People are just, I don't know. People are assuming
That
that I
could
think.
that could also be alluding to maybe, oh, what were those two characters? There's the characters from that faction that was like one of them was transgender and had to leave because like they were bald.
Oh.
It's scratching my brain. But maybe it's talk. Maybe that's what that's teasing is like that
Mm.
one like there's like that one like religious cult
Oh.
faction. You remember that?
I think I do remember that. I don't remember the name, but yeah, I remember what you're alluding to. Yeah.
Like Leaf, I think his name might have been. It's
Mm.
I can't recall, but I think maybe that's what it's talking about. So that
Gotcha.
would be interesting if
Eh?
they start to introduce like these other groups, and then you kind of tie it together with like the part two material, the revenge plot,
Yeah.
the cross border travel,
Yeah.
cross state
Exactly.
travel again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Hopefully, we'll see. We'll see. I think there's so much to like play around with, and I think I just hope they don't. They kind of don't like do what they did with the finale and just throw, as you were saying, somewhat like kind of. I'm not gonna say they threw everything that they were building. Like, they definitely talked a lot of the elements, but I really hope that they can show that side of Joel and Ellie, as you're saying, like taking these trips to the river, playing guitar lessons, something that I think Joel missed and and Ellie, growing up in this world definitely missed. So I think it would be very nice to see that. I think it's gonna be a lot more. I don't know, like I don't know if they're gonna do more action, less action. I don't really. If they stick to the game, I see it as just being sort of this drama, show, and I'm okay with it. That's what the game was honestly for me about, right? A little bit of revenge at the end, but yeah,
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
yeah,
Well, this was our discussion on The Last of Us, the tail end of the season, episode 789. If you liked it, leave us a like. If you got anything you'd like us to talk about or anything to add, leave a comment down below.
yep,
And if you want to see more of what we do, hit the subscribe button. Kamal, thank you for joining us,
yeah.
and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.